The Brihad Upanishad, The Path to Immortality. Maitreya Yajnavalkya said to his wife one day, "The time has come for me to go forth from the worldly life. Come, my dear, let me divide my property between you and Katyayani." Maitreya: "My lord, if I could get all the wealth in the world, would it help me to go beyond death?" Yajnavalkya: "Not at all. You would live and die like any other rich person. No one can buy immortality with money." Maitreya: "Of what use then are money and material possessions to me? Please tell me, my lord, of the way that leads to immortality." Yajnavalkya: "You have always been dear to me, Maitreya, and I love you even more now that you have asked me about immortality. Sit here by my side and reflect deeply on what I say. A wife loves her husband not for his own sake, dear, but because the self lives in him. A husband loves his wife not for her own sake, dear, but because the self lives in her. Children are loved not for their own sake, but because the self lives in them. Wealth is loved not for its own sake, but because the self lives in it. Brahmins are loved not for their own sake, but because the self lives in them. Kshatriyas are loved not for their own sake, but because the self lives in them. The universe is loved not for its own sake, but because the self lives in it. The gods are loved not for their own sake, but because the self lives in them. Creatures are loved not for their own sake, but because the self lives in them. Everything is loved not for its own sake, but because the self lives in it. This self has to be realized. Hear about this self and meditate upon him, Maitreya. When you hear about the self, meditate upon the self, and finally realize the self, you come to understand everything in life. For Brahmins confuse those who regard them as separate from the self. Kshatriyas confuse those who regard them as separate from the self. The universe confuses those who regard it as separate from the self. Gods and creatures confuse those who regard them as separate from the self. Everything confuses those who regard things as separate from the self. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, creatures, the universe, the gods, everything. These are the self. No one can understand the sounds of a drum without understanding both drum and drummer, nor the sounds of a conch without understanding both the conch and its blower, nor the sounds of a veena without understanding both veena and musician. As clouds of smoke arise from a fire laid with damp fuel, even so, from the Supreme have issued forth all the Vedas, history, arts, sciences, poetry, aphorisms, and commentaries. All these are the breath of the Supreme. As there can be no water without the sea, no touch without the skin, no smell without the nose, no taste without the tongue, no form without the eye, no sound without the ear, no thought without the mind, no wisdom without the heart, no work without hands, no walking without feet, no scriptures without the word, so there can be nothing without the self. As a lump of salt thrown in water dissolves and cannot be taken out again, though wherever we taste the water it is salty, even so, beloved, the separate self dissolves in the sea of pure consciousness, infinite and immortal. Separateness arises from identifying the self with the body, which is made up of the elements. When this physical identification dissolves, there can be no more separate self. This is what I want to tell you, beloved. Maitreya: I am bewildered, Blessed One, when you say there is then no separate self. Yajnavalkya: reflect on what I have said, beloved, and you will not be confused. As long as there is separateness, one sees another as separate from oneself, hears another as separate from oneself, smells another as separate from oneself, speaks to another as separate from oneself, thinks of another as separate from oneself, knows another as separate from oneself. But when the self is realized as the indivisible unity of life, who can be seen by whom? Who can be heard by whom? Who can be smelled by whom? Who can be spoken to by whom? Who can be thought of by whom? Who can be known by whom? Maitreya, my beloved, how can the knower ever be known? King Janaka of Vidya once performed a lavish sacrifice and distributed many gifts. Many wise men from Kuru and Panchala attended the ceremony, and Janaka wanted to know who was the wisest among them. So he drove 1,000 cows into a pen, and between the horns of each cow he fastened 10 gold coins. Then he said, "Venerable Brahmins, these cows are for the wisest one among you. Let him take them away." None of the other Brahmins dared to speak, but Yagnavalkya said to his pupil Samashrava, "Son, you can drive these cows home." "Hero of seers," his pupil exclaimed joyfully, and he drove them home. The other Brahmins were furious. How presumptuous, they shouted. And Ashvala, the royal priest, asked, "Yagnavalkya, do you really believe you are the wisest of those assembled here?" Yagnavalkya replied, "I salute the wisest, but I want those cows." Then Gargi, daughter of Vachaknu, said, "Venerable Brahmins, I shall ask Yagnavalkya only 2 questions. If he answers them well, no one here can defeat him in a spiritual debate." "Ask, Gargi," the sage replied. "Yagnavalkya, as a warrior from Kashi or Videha arises with bow and arrow to fell his opponent, I rise to fell you with 2 questions." "Ask them, Gargi." "That which is above heaven and below the earth, which is also between heaven and earth, which is the same through past, present, and future, in what is that woven, warp, and woof? Tell me, Yagnavalkya." Yagnavalkya, "That which is above heaven and below earth, which is also between heaven and earth, which is the same through the past, present, and future, that is woven, warp, and woof in space." Gargi, "My first question is answered well. Now for my second question." "Ask, Gargi." "In what is space itself woven, warp, and woof? Tell me, Yagnavalkya." Yagnavalkya, "The sages call it Akshara, the imperishable. It is neither big nor small, neither long nor short, neither hot nor cold, neither bright nor dark, neither air nor space. It is without attachment, without taste, smell, or touch, without eyes, ears, tongue, mouth, breath, or mind, without movement, without limitation, without inside or outside. It consumes nothing, and nothing consumes it. In perfect accord with the will of the imperishable, sun and moon make their orbits, heaven and earth remain in place, moments, hours, days, nights, fortnights, months, and seasons become years. Rivers starting from the snow-clad mountains flow east and west, north and south to the sea. Without knowing the imperishable, Gargi, whoever performs rites and ceremonies and undergoes austerities, even for many years, reaps little benefit, because rites, ceremonies, and austerities are all perishable. Whosoever dies without knowing the imperishable dies in a pitiable state. But those who know the imperishable attain immortality when the body is shed at death." The imperishable is the seer, Gargi, though unseen, the hearer, though unheard, the thinker, though unthought, the knower, though unknown. Nothing other than the imperishable can see, hear, think, or know. It is in the imperishable that space is woven, warp and woof. Gargi. Venerable Brahmins, count yourselves fortunate if you get away with merely paying this man homage. No one can defeat Yajnavalkya in debate about Brahman. With these words, Gargi ended her questions. Yajnavalkya came to Janaka, king of Videha, saying to himself, I will not talk today. But earlier, while they were discussing the fire ceremony, Yajnavalkya had promised him any boon he wanted. Now the king asked the sage permission to question him. Janaka, Yajnavalkya, what is the light of man? Yajnavalkya, the sun is our light, for by that light we sit, work, go out, and come back. Janaka, when the sun sets, what is the light of man? Yajnavalkya, the moon is our light, for by that light we sit, work, go out, and come back. Janaka, when the sun sets, Yajnavalkya, and the moon sets, what is the light of man? Yajnavalkya, fire is our light, for by that we sit, work, go out, and come back. Janaka, when the sun sets, Yajnavalkya, and the moon sets, and the fire goes out, what is the light of man? Yajnavalkya, then speech is our light, for by that we sit, work, go out, and come back. Even though we cannot see our own hand in the dark, we can hear what is said and move toward the person speaking. Janaka, when the sun sets, Yajnavalkya, and the moon sets, and the fire goes out, and no one speaks, what is the light of man? Yajnavalkya, the self indeed is the light of man, your majesty, for by that we sit, work, go out, and come back. Janaka, who is that self? Yajnavalkya, the self, pure awareness, shines as the light within the heart surrounded by the senses. Only seeming to think, seeming to move, the self neither sleeps, nor wakes, nor dreams. When the self takes on a body, he seems to assume the body's frailties and limitations. But when he sheds the body at the time of death, the self leaves all these behind. The human being has two states of consciousness, one in this world, the other in the next. But there is a third state between them, not unlike the world of dreams, in which we are aware of both worlds, with their sorrows and joys. When a person dies, it is only the physical body that dies. That person lives on in a non-physical body, which carries the impressions of his past life. It is these impressions that determine his next life. In this intermediate state, he makes and dissolves impressions by the light of the self. In that third state of consciousness, there are no chariots, no horses drawing them or roads on which to travel, but he makes up his own chariots, horses, and roads. In that state there are no joys or pleasures, but he makes up his own joys and pleasures. In that state there are no lotus ponds, no lakes, no rivers, but he makes up his own lotus ponds, lakes, and rivers. It is he who makes up all these from the impressions of his past or waking life. It is said of these states of consciousness that in the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self who never dreams, who is ever awake, watches by his own light the dreams woven out of past deeds and present desires. In the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, The shining self keeps the body alive with the vital force of prana and wanders wherever he wills. In the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self assumes many forms, eats with friends, indulges in sex, sees fearsome spectacles. But he is not affected by anything, because he is detached and free. And after wandering here and there in the state of dreaming, enjoying pleasures and seeing good and evil, he returns to the state from which he began. As a great fish swims between the banks of a river as it likes, so does the shining self move between the states of dreaming and waking. As an eagle, weary after soaring in the sky, folds its wings and flies down to rest in its nest, so does the shining self enter the state of dreamless sleep where one is freed from all desires. The self is free from desire, free from evil, free from fear. As a man in the arms of his beloved is not aware of what is without and what is within, so a person in union with the self is not aware of what is without and what is within, for in that unitive state all desires find their perfect fulfillment. There is no other desire that needs to be fulfilled, and one goes beyond sorrow. In that unitive state there is neither father nor mother, neither worlds nor gods, nor even scriptures. In that state there is neither thief nor slayer, neither low caste nor high, neither monk nor ascetic. The self is beyond good and evil, beyond all the suffering of the human heart. In that unitive state, one sees without seeing, for there is nothing separate from him, smells without smelling, for there is nothing separate from him, tastes without tasting, for there is nothing separate from him, speaks without speaking, for there is nothing separate from him, hears without hearing, for there is nothing separate from him, touches without touching, for there is nothing separate from him, thinks without thinking, for there is nothing separate from him, knows without knowing, for there is nothing separate from him. Where there is separateness, one sees another, smells another, tastes another, speaks to another, hears another, touches another, thinks of another, knows another. But where there is unity, one without a second, that is the world of Brahman. This is the supreme goal of life, the supreme treasure, the supreme joy. Those who do not seek the supreme goal live on but a fraction of this joy. Janaka, I give you another 1,000 cows. Please teach me more of the way to self-realization. Yajnavalkya. As a heavily laden cart creaks as it moves along, the body groans under its burden when a person is about to die. When the body grows weak through old age or illness, the self separates himself as a mango or fig or banyan fruit frees itself from the stalk and returns the way he came to begin another life. Just as when a king is expected to visit a village, the mayor and all the other officials turn out to welcome him with food and drink, all creation awaits the person who sheds his body, having realized Brahman. Here he comes, they say. Here comes Brahman himself. But the senses, while that man lies dying, gather around and mourn the self's departure as courtiers mourn when their king is about to leave. When body and mind grow weak, the self gathers in all the powers of life and descends with them into the heart. As prana leaves the eye, it ceases to see. He is becoming one, say the wise. He does not see. He is becoming one. He no longer hears. He is becoming one. He no longer speaks or tastes or smells or thinks or knows. By the light of the heart, the self leaves the body by one of its gates, and when he leaves, prana follows, and with it all the vital powers of the body. He who is dying merges in consciousness, and thus consciousness accompanies him when he departs, along with the impressions of all that he has done, experienced, and known. As a caterpillar, having come to the end of one blade of grass, draws itself together and reaches out for the next, so the self, having come to the end of one life and dispelled all ignorance, gathers in his faculties and reaches out from the old body to a new. As a goldsmith fashions an old ornament into a new and more beautiful one, so the self, having reached the end of the last life and dispelled all ignorance, makes for himself a new, more beautiful shape, like that of the Devas or other celestial beings. The self is indeed a Brahman, but through ignorance people identify it with intellect, mind, senses, passions, and the elements of earth, water, air, space, and fire. This is why the self is said to consist of this and that, and appears to be everything. As a person acts, so he becomes in life. Those who do good become good. Those who do harm become bad. Good deeds make one pure. Bad deeds make one impure. So, we are said to be what our desire is. As our desire is, so is our will. As our will is, so are our acts. As we act, so we become. We live in accordance with our deep, driving desire. It is this desire at the time of death that determines what our next life is to be. We will come back to earth to work out the satisfaction of that desire. But not those who are free from desire. They are free because all their desires have found fulfillment in the self. They do not die like the others, but, realizing Brahman, they merge in Brahman. So it is said, when all the desires that surge in the heart are renounced, the mortal becomes immortal. When all the knots that strangle the heart are loosened, the mortal becomes immortal. Here, in this very life. As the skin of a snake is sloughed onto an anthill, so does the mortal body fall. But the self, freed from the body, merges in Brahman, infinite life, eternal light. Janaka, I give you another 1,000 cows. Please, teach me more of the way to self-realization. Yagnavalkya. Those who realize the self enter into the peace that brings complete self-control and perfect patience. They see themselves in everyone and everyone in themselves. Evil cannot overcome them because they overcome all evil. Sin cannot consume them because they consume all sin. Free from evil, free from sin and doubt, they live in the kingdom of Brahman. Your Majesty, this kingdom is yours. Janaka. Venerable One, I offer myself and my kingdom in your service. The children of Prajapati, the Creator, gods, human beings, and asuras, the godless, lived with their father as students. When they had completed the allotted period, the gods said, Venerable One, please teach us. Prajapati answered with one syllable, Da. Have you understood, he asked. Yes, they said, you have told us Damyata, be self-controlled. You have understood, he said. Then the human beings approached. Venerable One, please teach us. Prajapati answered with one syllable, Da. Have you understood, he asked. Yes, they said, you have told us Datta, give. You have understood, he said. Then the godless approached. Venerable One, please teach us. Prajapati answered with the same syllable, Da. Have you understood, he asked. Yes, they said, you have told us Dayadwam, be compassionate. You have understood, he said. The heavenly voice of the thunder repeats this teaching. Da, da, da. Be self-controlled. Give. Be compassionate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Mandukya Upanishad. Om stands for the Supreme Reality. It is a symbol for what was, what is, and what shall be. Om represents also what lies beyond past, present, and future. Brahman is all, and the Self is Brahman. This Self has 4 states of consciousness. The first is called Vaishvanara, in which one lives with all the senses turned outward, aware only of the external world. Taijasa is the name of the second, the dreaming state, in which, with the senses turned inward, one enacts the impressions of past deeds and present desires. The third state is called Pratnya, of deep sleep, in which one neither dreams nor desires. There is no mind in Pratnya. There is no separateness. But the sleeper is not conscious of this. Let him become conscious in Pratnya, and it will open the door to the state of abiding joy. Pratnya, all-powerful and all-knowing, dwells in the hearts of all as the ruler. Pratnya is the source and end of all. The fourth is the superconscious state called Turiya, neither inward nor outward, beyond the senses and the intellect, in which there is none other than the Lord. He is the supreme goal of life. He is infinite peace and love. Realize Him. Turiya is represented by Om. Though indivisible, it has 3 sounds. A stands for Vaishvanara. Those who know this, through mastery of the senses, obtain the fruit of their desires and attain greatness. U indicates Taijasa. Those who know this by mastering even their dreams become established in wisdom. In their family, everyone leads the spiritual life. M corresponds to Pratnya. Those who know this, by stilling the mind, find their true stature and inspire everyone around to grow. The mantra Om stands for the supreme state of Turiya without parts, beyond birth and death, symbol of everlasting joy. Those who know Om as the Self become the Self. Truly, they become the Self. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Kena Upanishad. The student inquires, who makes my mind think? Who fills my body with vitality? Who causes my tongue to speak? Who is that invisible one who sees through my eyes and hears through my ears? The teacher replies, the Self is the ear of the ear, the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the word of words, and the life of life. Rising above the senses and the mind, and renouncing separate existence, the wise realize the deathless Self. Him our eyes cannot see, nor words express. He cannot be grasped even by the mind. We do not know, we cannot understand, because He is different from the known, and He is different from the unknown. Thus have we heard from the illumined ones. That which makes the tongue speak, but cannot be spoken by the tongue, know that as the Self. This Self is not someone other than you. That which makes the mind think, but cannot be thought by the mind, that is the Self indeed. This Self is not someone other than you. That which makes the eye see, but cannot be seen by the eye, that is the Self indeed. This Self is not someone other than you. that which makes the ear hear but cannot be heard by the ear. That is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes you draw breath but cannot be drawn by your breath. That is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. If you think, I know the self, you know not. All you can see is his external form. Continue, therefore, your meditation. The student. I do not think I know the self, nor can I say I know him not. The teacher. There is only one way to know the self, and that is to realize him yourself. The ignorant think the self can be known by the intellect, but the illumined know he is beyond the duality of the knower and the known. The self is realized in a higher state of consciousness when you have broken through the wrong identification that you are the body subject to birth and death. To be the self is to go beyond death. Realize the self, the shining goal of life. If you do not, there is only darkness. See the self in all, and go beyond death. Once upon a time, the gods defeated the demons, and though the victory was brought about through the power of Brahman, the gods boasted, ours is the victory, and ours the power and glory. Brahman saw their foolish pride and appeared before them, but they recognized him not. They said to Agni, god of fire, find out who this mysterious being is. I will, promised Agni, and he approached the being. Who are you? Asked the mysterious one. I am Agni, god of fire, known to all. Are you powerful? I can burn all on earth. Burn this, and Brahman placed a straw in front. The god of fire attacked the straw, but failed to burn it. Then he ran back to the gods and confessed, I have failed to discover who this mysterious being is. They said to Vayu, god of air, find out who this mysterious being is. I will, promised Vayu, and approached the being. Who are you? Asked the mysterious one. I am Vayu, god of air, king of space. Are you powerful? I can blow all away. Blow this away. Brahman placed a straw in front. The god of air attacked the straw, but failed to move it. Then he ran back to the gods and confessed, I have failed to discover who this mysterious being is. They begged Indra, leader of gods, find out who this mysterious being is. I will, promised Indra, and approached the being, who disappeared instantly. In his place appeared the lovely goddess of wisdom, Uma, daughter of the Himalayas. And Indra asked her, who was that being? Uma replied, that was Brahman, from whom comes all your power and glory. The gods realized at last the self is Brahman, Agni, Vayu, Indra. These three excel among the gods because they realized Brahman. The light of Brahman flashes in lightning. The light of Brahman flashes in our eyes. It is the power of Brahman that makes the mind to think, desire, and will. Therefore, use this power to meditate on Brahman. He is the inmost self of everyone. He alone is worthy of all our love. Meditate upon him in all. Those who meditate upon him are dear to all. The student. Teach me more of this spiritual wisdom. The teacher. I shall share with you fully what I know. Meditation, control of the senses and passions, and selfless service of all are the body, the scriptures are the limbs, and truth is the heart of this wisdom. Those who realize Brahman shall conquer all evil and attain the supreme state. Truly, they shall attain the supreme state. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Katha Upanishad, Once, long ago, Vajrashravasa gave away his possessions to gain religious merit. He had a son named Nachiketa, who, though only a boy, was full of faith in the scriptures. Nachiketa thought, when the offerings were made, "What merit can one obtain by giving away cows that are too old to give milk?" To help his father understand this, Nachiketa said, "To whom will you offer me?" He asked this again and again. "To death I give you," said his father in anger. The son thought, "I go, the first of many who will die, in the midst of many who are dying, on a mission to Yama, king of death. See how it was with those who came before, how it will be with those who are living. Like corn, mortals ripen and fall. Like corn, they come up again." Nachiketa went to Yama's abode, but the king of death was not there. He waited 3 days. When Yama returned, he heard a voice say, "When a spiritual guest enters the house, like a bright flame, he must be received well, with water to wash his feet. Far from wise are those who are not hospitable to such a guest. They will lose all their hopes, the religious merit they have acquired, their sons and their cattle." Yama, O spiritual guest, I grant you 3 boons to atone for the 3 inhospitable nights you have spent in my abode. Ask for 3 boons, 1 for each night. Nachiketa, O king of death, as the first of these boons, grant that my father's anger be appeased, so that he may recognize me when I return and receive me with love. Yama, I grant that your father, the son of Uddalaka and Aruna, will love you as in the past. When he sees you released from the jaws of death, he will sleep again with a mind at peace. Nachiketa, there is no fear at all in heaven, for you are not there, neither old age nor death. Passing beyond hunger and thirst and pain, all rejoice in the kingdom of heaven. You know the fire sacrifice that leads to heaven, O king of death. I have full faith in you and ask for instruction. Let this be your second boon to me. Yama, yes, I do know, Nachiketa, and shall teach you the fire sacrifice that leads to heaven and sustains the world. That knowledge concealed in the heart. Now listen. Then the king of death taught Nachiketa how to perform the fire sacrifice, how to erect the altar for worshipping the fire from which the universe evolves. When the boy repeated his instruction, the dread king of death was well pleased and said, "Let me give you a special boon. This sacrifice shall be called by your name, Nachiketa. Accept from me this many-hued chain, too. Those who have thrice performed this sacrifice realized their unity with father, mother, and teacher, and discharged the 3 duties of studying the scriptures, ritual worship, and giving alms to those in need, rise above birth and death. Knowing the god of fire born of Brahman, they attain perfect peace. Those who carry out this triple duty, conscious of its full meaning, will shake off the dread noose of death and transcend sorrow to enjoy the world of heaven. Thus have I granted you the second boon, Nachiketa, the secret of the fire that leads to heaven. It will have your name. Ask now, Nachiketa, for the third boon." Nachiketa, when a person dies, there arises this doubt. He still exists, say some. He does not, say others. I want you to teach me the truth. This is my third boon. Yama, this doubt haunted even the gods of old, for the secret of death is hard to know. Ask for some other boon, and release me from my promise. Nachiketa, this doubt haunted even the gods of old, for it is hard to know, O death, as you say. I can have no greater teacher than you, and there is no boon equal to this. Yama. Ask for sons and grandsons who will live 100 years. Ask for herds of cattle, elephants and horses, gold and vast land, and ask to live as long as you desire, or, if you can think of anything more desirable, ask for that, with wealth and long life as well. Nachiketa, be the ruler of a great kingdom, and I will give you the utmost capacity to enjoy the pleasures of life. Ask for beautiful women of loveliness rarely seen on earth, riding in chariots, skilled in music, to attend on you. But Nachiketa, don't ask me about the secret of death. Nachiketa. These pleasures last but until tomorrow, and they wear out the vital powers of life. How fleeting is all life on earth. Therefore, keep your horses and chariots, dancing and music for yourself. Never can mortals be made happy by wealth. How can we be desirous of wealth when we see your face and know we cannot live while you are here? This is the boon I choose and ask you for. Having approached an immortal like you, how can I, subject to old age and death, ever try to rejoice in a long life for the sake of the senses' fleeting pleasures? Dispel this doubt of mine, O King of Death. Does a person live after death, or does he not? Nachiketa asks for no other boon than the secret of this great mystery. Having tested young Nachiketa and found him fit to receive spiritual instruction, Yama, King of Death, said, "The joy of the Atman ever abides, but not what seems pleasant to the senses. Both these, differing in their purpose, prompt man to action. All is well for those who choose the joy of the Atman, but they miss the goal of life who prefer the pleasant. Perennial joy or passing pleasure, this is the choice one is to make always. The wise recognize these two, but not the ignorant. The first welcome what leads to abiding joy, though painful at the time. The latter run, goaded by their senses, after what seems immediate pleasure. Well have you renounced these passing pleasures so dear to the senses, Nachiketa, and turned your back on the way of the world which makes mankind forget the goal of life. Far apart are wisdom and ignorance. The first leads one to self-realization. The second makes one more and more estranged from his real self. I regard you, Nachiketa, worthy of instruction, for passing pleasures tempt you not at all. Ignorant of their ignorance, yet wise in their own esteem, these deluded men, proud of their vain learning, go round and round like the blind led by the blind. Far beyond their eyes, hypnotized by the world of sense, opens the way to immortality. I am my body. When my body dies, I die. Living in this superstition, they fall life after life under my sway. It is but few who hear about the self. Fewer still dedicate their lives to its realization. Wonderful is the one who speaks about the self. Rare are they who make it the supreme goal of their lives. Blessed are they who, through an illumined teacher, attain to self-realization. The truth of the self cannot come through one who has not realized that he is the self. The intellect cannot reveal the self beyond its duality of subject and object. They who see themselves in all and all in them help others through spiritual osmosis to realize the self themselves. This awakening, you have known, comes not through logic and scholarship, but from close association with a realized teacher. Wise are you, Nachiketa, because you seek the self-eternal. May we have more seekers like you. Nachiketa. I know that earthly treasures are transient, and never can I reach the eternal through them. Hence have I renounced all my desires for earthly treasures to win the eternal through your instruction. Yama. I spread before your eyes, Nachiketa, the fulfillment of all worldly desires, power to dominate the earth, delights celestial gained through religious rites, miraculous powers beyond time and space. These, with will and wisdom, have you renounced. The wise, realizing through meditation the timeless self beyond all perception, hidden in the cave of the heart, leave pain and pleasure far behind. Those who know they are neither body nor mind, but the immemorial self, the divine principle of existence, find the source of all joy and live in joy abiding. I see the gates of joy are opening for you, Nachiketa. Nachiketa. Teach me of that you see as beyond right and wrong, cause and effect, past and future. Yama. I will give you the word all the scriptures glorify, all spiritual disciplines express, to attain which aspirants lead a life of sense restraint and self-naughting. It is Om. This symbol of the Godhead is the highest. Realizing it, one finds complete fulfillment of all one's longings. It is of the greatest support to all seekers. Those in whose hearts Om reverberates unceasingly are indeed blessed and deeply loved as one who is the Self. The all-knowing Self was never born, nor will it die. Beyond cause and effect, the Self is eternal and immutable. When the body dies, the Self does not die. If the slayer believes that he can slay, or the slain believes that he can be slain, neither knows the truth. The eternal Self slays not, nor is it ever slain. Hidden in the heart of every creature exists the Self, subtler than the subtlest, greater than the greatest. They go beyond sorrow who extinguish their self-will and behold the glory of the Self through the grace of the Lord of Love. Though one sits in meditation in a particular place, the Self within can exercise his influence far away. Though still, he moves everything everywhere. When the wise realize the Self, formless in the midst of forms, changeless in the midst of change, omnipresent and supreme, they go beyond sorrow. The Self cannot be known through study of the Scriptures, nor through the intellect, nor through hearing learned discourses. The Self can be attained only by those whom the Self chooses. Verily, unto them does the Self reveal himself. The Self cannot be known by anyone who desists not from unrighteous ways, controls not his senses, stills not his mind, and practices not meditation. None else can know the omnipresent Self, whose glory sweeps away the rituals of the priest and the prowess of the warrior, and puts death itself to death. In the secret cave of the heart, two are seated by life's fountain. The separate ego drinks of the sweet and bitter stuff, liking the sweet, disliking the bitter, while the Supreme Self drinks sweet and bitter, neither liking this nor disliking that. The ego gropes in darkness, while the Self lives in light. So declare the illumined sages and the householders who worship the sacred fire in the name of the Lord. May we light the fire of Nachiketa that burns out the ego and enables us to pass from fearful fragmentation to fearless fullness in the changeless whole. Know the Self as Lord of the chariot, the body as the chariot itself, the discriminating intellect as charioteer, and the mind as reins. The senses, say the wise, are the horses. Selfish desires are the roads they travel. When the Self is confused with the body, mind, and senses, they point out, he seems to enjoy pleasure and suffer sorrow. When one lacks discrimination and his mind is undisciplined, The senses run hither and thither like wild horses, but they obey the rein like trained horses when one has discrimination and has made the mind one-pointed. Those who lack discrimination, with little control over their thoughts, and far from pure, reach not the pure state of immortality, but wander from death to death. But those who have discrimination, with a still mind and a pure heart, reach journey's end, never again to fall into the jaws of death. With a discriminating intellect as charioteer, and a trained mind as reins, they attain the supreme goal of life, to be united with the Lord of love. The senses derive from objects of sense perception, sense objects from mind, mind from intellect, and intellect from ego, ego from undifferentiated consciousness, and consciousness from Brahman. Brahman is the first cause and last refuge. Brahman, the hidden self in everyone, does not shine forth. He is revealed only to those who keep their mind one-pointed on the Lord of love, and thus develop a superconscious manner of knowing. Meditation enables them to go deeper and deeper into consciousness, from the world of words to the world of thoughts, then beyond thoughts to wisdom in the self. Get up, wake up, seek the guidance of an illumined teacher and realize the self. Sharp like a razor's edge, the sages say, is the path, difficult to traverse. The Supreme Self is beyond name and form, beyond the senses, inexhaustible, without beginning, without end, beyond time, space, and causality, eternal, immutable. Those who realize the Self are forever free from the jaws of death. The wise who gain experiential knowledge of this timeless tale of Nachiketa, narrated by Death, attain the glory of living and spiritual awareness. Those who, full of devotion, recite this supreme mystery at a spiritual gathering are fit for eternal life. They are indeed fit for eternal life. The self-existent Lord pierced the senses to turn outward. Thus we look to the world outside and see not the self within us. A sage withdrew his senses from the world of change and, seeking immortality, looked within and beheld the deathless self. The immature run after sense pleasures and fall into the widespread net of death. But the wise, knowing the self as deathless, seek not the changeless in the world of change. That through which one enjoys form, taste, smell, sound, touch, and sexual union is the self. Can there be anything not known to that who is the one in all? No one, no all. That through which one enjoys the waking and sleeping states is the self. To know that as consciousness is to go beyond sorrow. Those who know the self as enjoyer of the honey from the flowers of the senses, ever present within, ruler of time, go beyond fear, for this self is supreme. The God of creation, Brahma, born of the Godhead through meditation before the waters of life were created, who stands in the heart of every creature, is the self indeed, for this self is supreme. The goddess of energy, Aditi, born of the Godhead through vitality, mother of all the cosmic forces, who stands in the heart of every creature, is the self indeed, for this self is supreme. The god of fire, Agni, hidden between two fire sticks, like a child well protected in the mother's womb, whom we adore every day in meditation, is the self indeed, for this self is supreme. That which is the source of the sun, and of every power in the cosmos, beyond which there is neither going nor coming, is the self indeed, for this self is supreme. What is here is also there. What is there, also here. Who sees multiplicity but not the one indivisible self, must wander on and on from death to death. Only the one-pointed mind attains this state of unity. There is no one but the self, who sees multiplicity but not the one indivisible self, must wander on and on from death to death. That thumb-sized being enshrined in the heart, ruler of time, past and future, to see whom is to go beyond all fear, is the self indeed, for this self is supreme. That thumb-sized being, a flame without smoke, ruler of time, past and future, the same on this day as on tomorrow, is the self indeed, for this self is supreme. As the rain on a mountain peak runs off the slopes on all sides, so those who see only the seeming multiplicity of life run after things on every side. As pure water poured into pure water becomes the very same, so does the self of the illumined man or woman, Nachiketa, verily become one with the Godhead. There is a city with 11 gates, of which the ruler is the unborn self, whose light forever shines. They go beyond sorrow who meditate on the self, and are freed from the cycle of birth and death, for this self is supreme. The self is the sun shining in the sky, the wind blowing in space. He is the fire at the altar, and in the home the guest. He dwells in human beings, in gods, in truth, and in the vast firmament. He is the fish born in water, the plant growing in the earth, the river flowing down from the mountain, for this self is supreme. The adorable one, who is seated in the heart, rules the breath of life. Unto him all the senses pay their homage. When the dweller in the body breaks out in freedom from the bonds of flesh, what remains? For this self is supreme. We live not by the breath that flows in and flows out, but by him who causes the breath to flow in and flow out. Now, O Nachiketa, I will tell you of this unseen, eternal Brahman, and what befalls the self after death. Of those unaware of the self, some are born as embodied creatures, while others remain in a lower stage of evolution, as determined by their own need for growth. That which is awake even in our sleep, giving form in dreams to the objects of sense craving, that indeed is pure light, Brahman the immortal, who contains all the cosmos, and beyond whom none can go, for this self is supreme. As the same fire assumes different shapes when it consumes objects differing in shape, so does the one self take the shape of every creature in whom he is present. As the same air assumes different shapes when it enters objects differing in shape, so does the one self take the shape of every creature in whom he is present. As the sun, who is the eye of the world, cannot be tainted by the defects in our eyes, or by the objects it looks on, so the one self, dwelling in all, cannot be tainted by the evils of the world, for this self transcends all. The ruler supreme, inner self of all, multiplies his oneness into many. Eternal joy is theirs who see the self in their own hearts. To none else does it come. Changeless amid the things that pass away, pure consciousness in all who are conscious, the one answers the prayers of many. Eternal peace is theirs who see the self in their own hearts. To none else does it come. Nachiketa, how can I know that blissful self, supreme, inexpressible, realized by the wise? Is he the light, or does he reflect light? Yama, there shines not the sun, neither moon, nor star, nor flash of lightning, nor fire lit on earth. The self is the light reflected by all. He shining, everything shines after him. The tree of eternity has its roots above and its branches on earth below. Its pure root is Brahman, the immortal, from whom all the worlds draw their life, and whom none can transcend. For this self is supreme. The cosmos comes forth from Brahman and moves in him. With his power it reverberates like thunder crashing in the sky. Those who realize him pass beyond the sway of death. In fear of him, fire burns. In fear of him, the sun shines, the clouds rain, and the winds blow. In fear of him, death stalks about to kill. If one fails to realize Brahman in this life, before the physical sheath is shed, he must again put on a body in the world of embodied creatures. Brahman can be seen as in a mirror, in a pure heart, in the world of the ancestors as in a dream, in the Gandharva world as the reflections in trembling waters, and clear as light in the realm of Brahma. Knowing the senses to be separate from the self, and the sense experience to be fleeting, the wise grieve no more. Above the senses is the mind. Above the mind is the intellect. Above that is the ego. And above the ego is the unmanifested cause. And beyond is Brahman, omnipresent, attributeless. Realizing him, one is released from the cycle of birth and death. He is formless and can never be seen with these two eyes. But he reveals himself in the heart made pure through meditation and sense restraint. Realizing him, one is released from the cycle of birth and death. When the five senses are stilled, when the mind is stilled, when the intellect is stilled, that is called the highest state by the wise. They say yoga is this complete stillness in which one enters the unitive state, never to become separate again. If one is not established in this state, the sense of unity will come and go. The unitive state cannot be attained through words or thoughts or through the eye. How can it be attained except through one who is established in this state himself? There are two selves, the separate ego and the indivisible Atman. When one rises above I and me and mine, the Atman is revealed as one's real self. When all desires that surge in the heart are renounced, the mortal becomes immortal. When all the knots that strangle the heart are loosened, the mortal becomes immortal. This sums up the teaching of the scriptures. From the heart there radiate 101 vital tracts. One of them rises to the crown of the head. This way leads to immortality, the others to death. The Lord of love, not larger than the thumb, is ever enshrined in the hearts of all. Draw him clear out of the physical sheath, as one draws the stalk from the munja grass. Know thyself to be pure and immortal. Know thyself to be pure and immortal. Nachiketa learned from the king of death the whole discipline of meditation. Freeing himself from all separateness, he won immortality in Brahman. So blessed is everyone who knows the self. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Mundaka Upanishad. From infinite Godhead came forth Brahma, first among gods, from whom sprang the cosmos. Brahma gave the vision of the Godhead, the true source of wisdom that life demands, to his eldest son Atharva, who gave it to Angi. In turn, Angi gave it to Satyavaha. In this tradition, Satyavaha gave it to Angiras. A great householder named Shaunaka once came to Angiras and reverently asked, "What is that by knowing which all is known?" He replied, "The illumined sages say knowledge is twofold, higher and lower. The study of the Vedas, linguistics, rituals, astronomy, and all the arts can be called lower knowledge. The higher is that which leads to self-realization. The eye cannot see it, mind cannot grasp it. The deathless self has neither caste nor race, neither eyes nor ears nor hands nor feet. Sages say this self is infinite in the great and in the small, everlasting and changeless, the source of life. As the web issues out of the spider and is withdrawn, as plants sprout from the earth, as hair grows from the body, even so, the sages say, this universe springs from the deathless self, the source of life. The deathless self meditated upon himself and projected the universe as evolutionary energy. From this energy developed life, mind, the elements, and the world of karma, which is enchained by cause and effect. The deathless self sees all, knows all. From him springs Brahma, who embodies the process of evolution into name and form by which the one appears to be many. The rituals and the sacrifices described in the Vedas deal with lower knowledge. The sages ignored these rituals and went in search of higher knowledge. Look at these rituals. When the fire is lit, pour butter into the fire in 2 spots. Then place the offering between these 2. These oblations will take the worshipper on the sun's rays to the world of Brahma, where he can have his fill of enjoyment. Such rituals are unsafe rafts for crossing the sea of samsara, of birth and death. Doomed to shipwreck are those who try to cross the sea of samsara on these poor rafts. Ignorant of their ignorance, yet wise in their own esteem, these deluded men, proud of their vain learning, go round and round like the blind led by the blind. Living in darkness, immature, unaware of any higher good or goal, they fall again and again into the sea. But those who are pure in heart, who practice meditation and conquer their senses and passions, shall attain the immortal self, source of all light and source of all life. Action, prompted by pleasure or profit, cannot help anyone to cross this sea. Seek a teacher who has realized the self. To a student whose heart is full of love, who has conquered his senses and passions, the teacher will reveal the Lord of love. Imperishable is the Lord of love. As from a blazing fire thousands of sparks leap forth, so millions of beings arise from the Lord of love and return to him. The Lord of love is above name and form. He is present in all and transcends all. Unborn, without body and without mind, from him comes every body and mind. He is the source of space, air, fire, water, and the earth that holds us all. Fire is his head, the sun and moon his eyes, the heavens his ears, the scriptures his voice, the air his breath, the universe his heart, and the earth his footrest. The Lord of love is the innermost self of all. From him comes the fire that burns in the sun. From the sky lit by sun and moon comes rain. From rain comes food. From food, the sexual seed. All finally come from the Lord of love. From him come the scriptures, chants, and prayers, religious rites, and sacrificial gifts. From him come work, time, and givers of gifts, and all things under the sun and moon. From him come the gods of the natural world, men, beasts, and birds, and food to nourish them. From him come all spiritual disciplines, meditation, truth, faith, and purity. From him come the 7 organs of sense, 7 hot desires and their 7-fold objects, and the 7 levels of consciousness in the cavern of the heart. From him come all the seas and the mountains, the rivers and the plants that support life. As the innermost self of all, he dwells within the cavern of the heart. The Lord of love is the one self of all. He is detached work, spiritual wisdom, and immortality. Realize the self hidden in the heart and cut asunder the knot of ignorance here and now. Bright but hidden, the self dwells in the heart. Everything that moves, breathes, opens, and closes lives in the self. He is the source of love and may be known through love, but not through thought. He is the goal of life. Attain this goal. The shining self dwells hidden in the heart. Everything in the cosmos, great and small, lives in the self. He is the source of life, truth beyond the transience of this world. He is the goal of life. Attain this goal. Take the great bow of the sacred scriptures, place it on the arrow of devotion, then draw the bowstring of meditation and aim at the target, the Lord of love. The mantram is the bow, the aspirant is the arrow, and the Lord the target. Now draw the bowstring of meditation, and hitting the target, be one with him. In his robe are woven heaven and earth, mind and body. Realize him as the one behind the many, and stop all vain talk. He is the bridge from death to deathless life, where all the nerves meet like spokes in a wheel. There he dwells, the one behind the many. Meditate upon him in the mantram. May he guide us from death to deathless life. He knows everyone and sees everything. It is his glory that fills the cosmos. He resides in the city of the heart. It is his power that moves body and mind. May he guide us from death to deathless life. When he is seen within us and without, he sets right all doubts and dispels the pain of wrong actions committed in the past. In the golden city of the heart dwells the Lord of love, without parts, without stain. Know him as the radiant light of lights. There shines not the sun, neither moon nor star, nor flash of lightning, nor fire lit on earth. The Lord is the light reflected by all. He, shining, everything shines after him. The Lord of love is before and behind. He extends to the right and to the left. He extends above. He extends below. There is no one here but the Lord of love. He alone is. In truth, he alone is. Like two golden birds perched on the selfsame tree, intimate friends, the ego and the self dwell in the same body. The former eats the sweet and sour fruits of the tree of life, while the latter looks on in detachment. As long as we think we are the ego, we feel attached and fall into sorrow. But realize that you are the self, the Lord of life, and you will be freed from sorrow. When you realize that you are the self, supreme source of light, supreme source of love, you transcend the duality of life and enter into the unitive state. The Lord of love shines in the hearts of all. Seeing him in all creatures, the wise forget themselves in the service of all. The Lord is their joy. The Lord is their rest. Such as they are the lovers of the Lord. By truth, meditation, and self-control, one can enter into this state of joy and see the self shining in a pure heart. Truth is victorious, never untruth. Truth is the way. Truth is the goal of life, reached by sages who are free from self-will. The effulgent self who is beyond thought shines in the greatest, shines in the smallest, shines in the farthest, shines in the nearest, shines in the secret chamber of the heart. Beyond the reach of the senses is he, but not beyond the reach of a mind stilled through the practice of deep meditation. Beyond the reach of words and works is he, but not beyond the reach of a pure heart freed from the sway of the senses. Sages are granted all the help they need in everything they do to serve the Lord. Let all those who seek their own fulfillment love and honor the illumined sage. The wise have attained the unitive state and see only the resplendent Lord of love. Desiring nothing in the physical world, they have become one with the Lord of love. Those who dwell on and long for sense pleasure are born in a world of separateness. But let them realize they are the self, and all separateness will fall away. Not through discourse, not through the intellect, not even through study of the scriptures can the self be realized. The self reveals himself to the one who longs for the self, and those who long for the self with all their heart are chosen by the self as his own. Not by the weak, not by the unearnest, not by those who practice wrong disciplines can the self be realized. The self reveals himself as the Lord of love to the one who practices right disciplines. What the sages sought, they have found at last. No more questions have they to ask of life. With self-will extinguished, they are at peace. Seeing the Lord of love in all around, serving the Lord of love in all around, they are united with him forever. They have attained the summit of wisdom by the steep path of renunciation. They have attained to immortality and are united with the Lord of love. When they leave the body, the vital force returns to the cosmic womb, but their work becomes a beneficial force in life to bring others together in the self. The flowing river is lost in the sea. The illumined sage is lost in the self. The flowing river has become the sea. The illumined sage has become the self. Those who know the self become the self. None in their family forgets the self. Freed from the fetters of separateness, they attain to immortality. Let this wisdom be taught only to those who obey the law of life's unity. Let this wisdom be taught only to those who offer their lives to the Lord of love. This is the great truth taught in ancient times by the sage Angiras to Shaunaka. Let us adore the illumined sages. Let us adore the illumined sages. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Atareya Upanishad. May my word be one with my thought, and my thought be one with my word. O Lord of love, let me realize you with my consciousness. May I realize the truth of the scriptures and translate it into my daily life. May I proclaim the truth of the scriptures. May I speak the truth. May it protect me, and may it protect my teacher. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Before the world was created, the self alone existed. Nothing whatever stirred. Then the self thought, let me create the world. He brought forth all the worlds out of himself. Ambas, high above the sky. Marichi, the sky. Mara, the middle regions, that is earth. And Apa, the realm of waters below. The self thought, I have created these worlds. Let me now create guardians for these worlds. From the waters he drew forth Purusha and gave him a form. As the self brooded over the form, a mouth opened, as does an egg, giving forth speech and fire. Nostrils opened with the power of breathing the air. Eyes opened, giving rise to sight and sun. And ears opened to hear the sound in space. Skin appeared, and from it hair. From hair came plants and trees. The heart gushed forth. From the heart came the mind, and from the mind came the moon. The navel opened with the downward force, apana, which gave rise to death. The sex organ rose with living water, which gave rise to birth. Thus came these guardians into the mighty ocean of existence. The self caused them to hunger and thirst. They said to the self, "Give us a place where we can live and eat." He brought them the form of a cow. They said, "That is not what we desire." He brought them the form of a horse, but they said again, "This is not what we desire." He brought them a human form. They said, "Enjoy, just right. The human body is just right for us." The self asked them to enter the body and take up their places. Fire, becoming speech, entered the mouth. Air, becoming smell, entered the nose. The sun, becoming sight, entered the eyes. Sounds in space, becoming hearing, entered the ears. Plants, herbs, and trees, becoming hair, entered the skin. The moon, becoming mind, entered the heart. The god of death, becoming downward force, entered the navel. The god of living water, becoming sperm, entered the sex organ. Hunger and thirst said to the self, "Give us a place." He told them, "Enter into these guardians and share their life with them." Thus hunger and thirst for food, drink, and pleasure attend us, whatever we do in life. The self, creator, thought, "Here are the worlds and their guardians. Let me now bring forth food for them." He brooded over the waters, and food appeared in the form of matter. It tried to run away in fear, and man, the first embodied being, tried to catch it with his speech, but he could not catch it with words. Merely by repeating the name of food, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with his breath, but he could not. Just by smelling food, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with his eyes, but he could not. By looking at food, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with his ears, but he could not. By merely hearing about food, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with his skin, but he could not. By touching food, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with his mind, but he could not. By thinking about food, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with his genital organ, but he could not. By sexual union, one cannot satisfy hunger. He tried to catch it with apana, the downward prana of digestion, and at last he caught it. Thus it is apana that takes in food. Thus it is apana that lives on food. The self thought, "How can this be without me? If speaking is done by speech, breathing by breath, seeing by eyes, hearing by ears, smelling by nose, and meditation by the mind, then who am I?" Entering the body through the gateway at the crown of the head, he passed into the three states of consciousness in which the self resides. Filled with wonder we sing, "I see the Lord." So his name is Idamdra, he who sees. The name Indra stands for Idamdra. The gods do like to sit behind a veil. Indeed, they like to sit behind a veil. And it becomes child in woman. This is the first birth. Child and mother are one. She protects the child and needs protection. The mother carries the child in her womb, and the father bestows his loving care before and after birth. The child is their Atman, their very self, and continues their line without break as the second birth. He discharges all their holy duties and sheds his body too when it grows old to be born again. This is the third birth. The sage Vamadeva declared of old, "While dwelling in the womb I understood the birth of all the gods. 100 forms strong as steel held me prisoner, but I broke loose from them like a hawk from the cage and came out swiftly." While still in the womb, Vamadeva made this declaration. He emerged from his mother's womb, fully illumined, to live in abiding joy, and went beyond death. Indeed, he went beyond death. Who is this self on whom we meditate? Is it the self by which we see, hear, smell, and taste, through which we speak in words? Is self the mind by which we perceive, direct, understand, know, remember, think, will, desire, and love? These are but servants of the self, who is pure consciousness. This self is all in all. He is all the gods, the 5 elements, earth, air, fire, water, and space, all creatures. great or small, born of eggs, of wombs, of heat, of shoots, horses, cows, elephants, men and women, all beings that walk, all beings that fly, and all that neither walk nor fly. Pratnya is pure consciousness guiding all. The world rests on Pratnya, and Pratnya is Brahman. Those who realize Brahman live in joy and go beyond death. Indeed, they go beyond death. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Taittiriya Upanishad. May the Lord of Day grant us peace. May the Lord of Night grant us peace. May the Lord of Sight grant us peace. May the Lord of Might grant us peace. May the Lord of Speech grant us peace. May the Lord of Space grant us peace. I bow down to Brahman, source of all power. I will speak the truth and follow the law. Guard me and my teacher against all harm. Guard me and my teacher against all harm. Let us learn the art of recitation, which calls for knowledge of letters, accent, measure, emphasis, sequence, and rhythm. May the light of wisdom illumine us. May we become united with the Lord. Let us contemplate 5 categories: this world and luminous worlds in the sky, education, progeny, and speech. What is this world? Earth below, sky above, air between, and space connecting them. What are the luminous worlds in the sky? Fire on one side and sun on the other, water in between, lightning connecting them. What is education? Teacher speaking to the disciple seated by his side, wisdom between, discourse connecting them. What is progeny? Mother on one side, father on the other, the child between, the sexual organ connecting them. What is speech? The lower jaw and the upper, words between, and the tongue connecting them. Those who contemplate these categories will have children, cattle, food, and wisdom. O Lord of love, revealed in the Scriptures, who have assumed the forms of all creatures, grant me wisdom to choose the path that can lead me to immortality. May my body be strong, my tongue be sweet. May my ears hear always the sound of Om, the supreme symbol of the Lord of love, and may my love for him grow more and more. Lord, may I grow in spiritual wisdom, and may I have food and clothes and cattle. May students come to me from far and near, like a flowing river all the year. May I be enabled to guide them all, to train their senses and still their minds. May this be my wealth, may this be my fame. O Lord of love, may I enter into you. May you reveal yourself to me, the pure one, masquerading as many. You are the refuge of all devotees. I am your devotee. Make me your own. Having taught the Vedas, the teacher says, speak the truth, do your duty, neglect not the scriptures, give your best to your teacher, do not cut off the line of progeny. Swerve not from the truth, swerve not from the good, protect your spiritual progress always, give your best in learning and teaching, never fail in respect to the sages. See the divine in your mother, father, teacher, and guest. Never do what is wrong. Honor those who are worthy of honor. Give with faith. Give with love. Give with joy. If you are in doubt about right conduct, follow the example of the sages who know what is best for spiritual growth. This is the instruction of the Vedas. This is the secret. This is the message. They have attained the goal who realize Brahman as the supreme reality, the source of truth, wisdom, and boundless joy. They see the Lord in the cave of the heart and are granted all the blessings of life. From Brahman came space, from space, air, from air, fire, from fire, water, from water, earth, from earth, plants, from plants, food, and from food the human body, head, arms, legs, and heart. From food are made all bodies which become food again for others after their death. Food is the most important of all things for the body. Therefore, it is the best medicine for all the body's ailments. They who look upon food as the Lord's gift shall never lack life's physical comforts. From food are made all bodies. All bodies feed on food, and it feeds on all bodies. The physical sheath is made up of food. Within it is contained the vital sheath, which has the same form, with prana as head, dhyana as right arm, apana as left, space as heart, and earth as foundation. Man and woman, beast and bird live by breath. Breath is therefore called the true sign of life. It is the vital force in everyone that determines how long we are to live. Those who look upon breath as the Lord's gift shall live to complete the full span of life. The vital sheath is made of living breath. Within it is contained the mental sheath, which has the same form, with yajur as head, rig as right arm, sama as left. The heart is the wisdom of the Upanishads, and the Atharva is the foundation. Realizing that from which all words turn back and thoughts can never reach, one knows the bliss of Brahman and fears no more. Within the mental sheath made up of waves of thought, there is contained the sheath of wisdom. It has the same form, with faith as the head, righteousness as right arm, and truth as left. Practice of meditation is its heart, and discrimination its foundation. Wisdom means a life of selfless service. Even the gods seek spiritual wisdom. Those who attain wisdom are freed from sin and find all their selfless desires granted. The wisdom sheath is made of detachment. Within it is contained the sheath of bliss, which has the same form, with joy as the head, contentment as right arm, and delight as left. Bliss is the heart, and Brahman the foundation. Those who deny the Lord deny themselves, and those who affirm the Lord affirm themselves. The wise, not the unwise, realize the Lord. The Lord of love willed, "Let me be many." And in the depths of his meditation, he created everything that exists. Meditating, he entered into everything. He who has no form assumed many forms. He who is infinite appeared finite. He who is everywhere assumed a place. He who is all wisdom caused ignorance. He who is real caused unreality. It is he who has become everything. It is he who gives reality to all. Before the universe was created, Brahman existed as unmanifest. Brahman brought the Lord out of himself. Therefore he is called the self-existent. The self is the source of abiding joy. Our hearts are filled with joy in seeing him enshrined in the depths of our consciousness. If he were not there, who would breathe? Who would live? He it is who fills every heart with joy. When one realizes the self in whom all life is one, changeless, nameless, formless, then one fears no more. Until we realize the unity of life, we live in fear. For the mere scholar who knows not the self, his separateness becomes fear itself. Through fear of Brahman, the wind blows, sun shines, fire burns, rain falls, and death snatches all away. What is the joy of realizing the self? Take a young man, healthy, strong, good, and cultured, who has all the wealth that earth can offer. Let us take this as one measure of joy. 100 times that joy is one measure of the Gandharva's joy, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of the joy of Pitris, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of the joy of Devas, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of the Karma Deva's joy, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of the joy of Indra, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of Brihaspati's joy, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of the joy of Virat, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. 100 times that joy is one measure of Prajapati's joy, but no less joy has one illumined, free from self-will. The self in man and in the sun are one. Those who understand this see through the world and go beyond the various sheaths of being to realize the unity of life. Realizing that from which all words turn back and thoughts can never reach, they know the bliss of Brahman and fear no more. No more are they oppressed by the question, how did I fail to perform what is right, and how did I perform what is not right? Those who realize the joy of Brahman, having known what is right and what is wrong, are delivered forever from this duality. Bhrigu went to his father Varuna and asked respectfully, "What is Brahman?" Varuna replied, "First learn about food, breath, eye, ear, speech, and mind. Then seek to know that from which these are born, by which they live, for which they search, and to which they return. That is Brahman." Bhrigu meditated and found that food is Brahman. From food are born all creatures. By food they grow, and to food they return. Not fully satisfied with his knowledge, Bhrigu went to his father Varuna and appealed, "Please teach me more of Brahman." "Seek it through meditation," replied Varuna, "for meditation is Brahman." Bhrigu meditated and found that life is Brahman. From life are born all creatures. By life they grow, and to life they return. Not fully satisfied with his knowledge, Bhrigu went to his father Varuna and appealed, "Please teach me more of Brahman." "Seek it through meditation," replied Varuna, "for meditation is Brahman." Bhrigu meditated and found that mind is Brahman. From mind are born all creatures. By mind they grow, and to mind they return. Not fully satisfied with his knowledge, Bhrigu went to his father Varuna and appealed, "Please teach me more of Brahman." "Seek it through meditation," replied Varuna, "for meditation is Brahman." Bhrigu meditated and found that wisdom is Brahman. From wisdom come all creatures. By wisdom they grow, to wisdom return. Not fully satisfied with his knowledge, Bhrigu went to his father Varuna and appealed, "Please teach me more of Brahman." "Seek it through meditation," replied Varuna, "for meditation is Brahman." Bhrigu meditated and found that joy is Brahman. From joy are born all creatures. By joy they grow, and to joy they return. Bhrigu, Varuna's son, realized this self in the very depths of meditation. Those who realize the self within the heart stand firm, grow rich, gather a family around them, and receive the love of all. Respect food. The body is made of food. Food and body exist to serve the self. Those who realize the self within the heart stand firm, grow rich, gather a family around them, and receive the love of all. Waste not food, waste not water, waste not fire. Fire and water exist to serve the self. Those who realize the self within the heart stand firm, grow rich, gather a family around them, and receive the love of all. Increase food. The earth can yield much more. Earth and space exist to serve the self. Those who realize the self within the heart stand firm, grow rich, gather a family around them, and receive the love of all. Refuse not food to those who are hungry. When you feed the hungry, you serve the Lord from whom is born every living creature. Those who realize the self within the heart stand firm, grow rich, gather a family around them, and receive the love of all. Realizing this makes our words pleasing, our breathing deep, our arms ready to serve the Lord in all around, our feet ready to go to the help of everyone in need. Realizing this, we see the Lord of love in beast and bird, in starlight and in joy, in sex energy, and in the grateful rain, in everything the universe contains. Drawing on the Lord's resources within, security, wisdom, and love in action, we conquer every enemy within to be united with the Lord of love. The self in man and in the sun are one. Those who understand this see through the world and go beyond the various sheaths of being to realize the unity of life. Those who realize that all life is one are at home everywhere and see themselves in all beings. They sing in wonder, I am the food of life. I am. I am. I eat the food of life. I eat. I eat. I link food and water. I link. I link. I am the firstborn in the universe, older than the gods. I am immortal. Who shares food with the hungry protects me. Who shares not with them is consumed by me. I am this world, and I consume this world. They who understand this understand life. This is the Upanishad, the secret teaching. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Prashna Upanishad. May we hear only what is good for all. May we see only what is good for all. May we serve you, Lord of love, all our life. May we be used to spread your peace on earth. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Question 1. Sukesha, Satyakama, and Gargya, Kausalya, Bhargava, and Kabindi, who were all seeking self-realization, approached with love sage Pippalada for his guidance on the spiritual path. The sage told them, live with me for 1 year, practicing sense restraint and complete trust. Ask me questions at the end of the year, and I will answer them if I can. After a year, Kabandi asked the sage, Master, who created the universe? The sage replied, the Lord meditated and brought forth prana with Rai, the giver of name and form, male and female, so that they would bring forth innumerable creatures for him. Prana is the sun, Rai is the moon. Matter is solid, matter is subtle. Rai, therefore, is present everywhere. The sun gives light and life to all who live, east and west, north and south, above, below. It is the prana of the universe. The wise see the Lord of love in the sun, rising in all its golden radiance to give its warmth and light and life to all. The wise see the Lord of love in the year, which has 2 paths, the northern and the southern. Those who observe outward forms of worship and are content with personal pleasures, travel after death by the southern path, the path of the ancestors and of Rai, to the lunar world, and are born again. But those who seek the self through meditation, self-discipline, wisdom, and faith in God, travel after death by the northern path, the path of prana, to the solar world, supreme refuge beyond the reach of fear and free from the cycle of birth and death. Some look upon the sun as our Father who makes life possible with heat and rain and divides time into months and seasons. Others have seen him riding in wisdom on his chariot, with 7 colors as horses and 6 wheels to represent the whirling spokes of time. The wise see the Lord of Love in the month. Rai is the dark half, prana the bright. The wise worship in the light of wisdom, others in the darkness of ignorance. The wise see the Lord of Love in the day. Rai is the dark night, prana daylight. Those who use their days for sexual pleasure consume prana, the very stuff of life, but mastered, sex becomes a spiritual force. The wise see the Lord of Love in all food. From food comes seed, and from seed all creatures. They take the lunar path who live for sex, but those who are self-controlled and truthful will go to the bright regions of the sun. The bright world of Brahman can be attained only by those who are pure and true, only by those who are pure and true. Question 2. Then Bhargava approached the sage and asked, Master, what powers support this body? Which of them are manifested in it, and among them all, which is the greatest? The sage replied, The powers are space, air, fire, water, earth, speech, mind, vision, and hearing. All these boasted, we support this body. But prana, vital energy supreme over them all, said, Don't deceive yourselves. It is I, dividing myself fourfold, who hold this body together. But they would not believe these words of prana. To demonstrate the truth, prana arose and left the body, and all the powers knew they had to leave as well. When prana returned to the body, they too were back. As when the queen bee goes out, all the bees go out, and when she returns, all return. So returned speech, mind, vision, and hearing. Then the powers understood and sang this song. Prana burns as fire, he shines as the sun, he rains as the cloud, he blows as the wind, he crashes as the thunder in the sky. He is the earth, he has form and no form. Prana is immortality. Everything rests in prana, as spokes rest in the hub of the wheel. All the Vedas, all the rituals, all the warriors and kings. O prana, you move in the mother's womb as life, to be manifested again. All creatures pay their homage to you. You carry offerings to gods and ancestors and help sages to master their senses, which depend upon you for their function. You are the creator and destroyer, and our protector. You shine as the sun in the sky. You are the source of all light. When you pour yourself down as rain on earth, every living creature is filled with joy and knows food will be abundant for all. You are pure and master of everything. As fire, you receive our oblations. It is you who gives us the breath of life. Be kind to us with your invisible form, which dwells in the voice, the eye, and the ear, and pervades the mind. Abandon us not. O prana, all the world depends on you. As a mother looks after her children, look after us. Grant us wealth and wisdom. Question 3. Then Kausalya approached the sage and asked, Master, from what source does this prana come? How does he enter the body? How live after dividing himself into 5? How leave the body at the time of death? How does he support all that is without and all that is within? The sage replied, You ask searching questions. Since you are a devoted aspirant seeking Brahman, I shall answer them. Prana is born of the self. As a man casts a shadow, the self casts prana into the body at the time of birth, so that the mind's desires may be fulfilled. As a king appoints officers to do his work in all the villages, so prana works with 4 other pranas, each a part of himself, to carry out different functions in the body. The main prana dwells in eye, ear, mouth, and nose. Apana, the downward force in the organs of sex and of excretion. Samana, the equalizing force in the middle, digests food and kindles the 7 fires. Vyana, distributor of energy, moves through the myriad vital currents radiating from the heart where lives the self. At the time of death, through the subtle track that runs upward through the spinal channel, Udana, the 5th force, leads the selfless up the long ladder of evolution and the selfish down. But those who are both selfless and selfish come back to this earth. The sun is the prana of the universe, and it rises to bring light to our eyes. The earth draws the lower fire of apana. The space between sun and earth is samana, and the moving air is vyana. Fire is udana. When that fire goes out, the senses are drawn back into the mind, and the person is ready for rebirth. Whatever the content of consciousness at the time of death, that is what unites us to prana, udana, and the self, to be reborn in the plane we have earned. Those who realize this go beyond death. Their children too follow in their footsteps. Those who perceive how prana rises, enters the body, and becomes 5-fold to serve the self, they die not. They die not. Question 4. Then Gargya approached the sage and asked him, Sir, when a man is sleeping, who is it that sleeps in him? Who sees the dreams he sees? And when he wakes up, who in him is awake? When he enjoys, who is enjoying? In whom do all these faculties rest? The sage replied, As the rays of the sun when night comes become all one in his disk until they spread out again at sunrise, even so the senses are gathered up in the mind, which is master of them all. Therefore, when a person neither hears, sees, smells, tastes, touches, speaks, nor enjoys, we say he sleeps. Only the fires of prana are burning. Apana is like the holy hearth fire ever burning in the householder's shrine. Vyana is like the fire that faces south for carrying offerings to our ancestors. And prana is the fire that faces eastward. Samana is the equalizing fire that balances inward and outward breath, the offerings made by the mind. Udana is the fruit of dreamless sleep in which the mind is led close to the self. The dreaming mind recalls past impressions. It sees again what has been seen. It hears again what has been heard, enjoys again what has been enjoyed in many places. Seen and unseen, heard and unheard, enjoyed and unenjoyed, the real and the unreal, the mind sees all. The mind sees all. When the mind is stilled in dreamless sleep, it brings rest and repose to the body. Just as birds fly to the tree for rest, all things in life find their rest in the self. Earth, water, fire, air, space, and their subtle elements, the eyes and what can be seen, the ears and what can be heard, the nostrils and what can be smelled, the palate and what can be tasted, the skin and what can be touched, the tongue and what can be spoken, the hands and what can be held, the organ of sex and its object of enjoyment, the organ of excretion and what is excreted, the feet and what they walk on, the mind and what it thinks, the intellect and what it knows, the ego and what it grasps, the heart and what it loves, the light and what it reveals. All things in life find their rest in the self, in dreamless sleep. It is the self who sees, hears, smells, touches, and tastes, who thinks, acts, and is pure consciousness. The self is Brahman, changeless and supreme. Those who know the Supreme Self as formless, without shadow, without impurity, know all, gentle friend, and live in all. Those who know the Self, the seat of consciousness, in whom the breath and all the senses live, know all, gentle friend, and live in all. Question 5. Satyakama approached the sage and asked, "Those who have become established in Om, what happens to them after death?" The sage replied, "Om is both immanent and transcendent. Through it one can attain the personal and the impersonal. Om has 3 sounds. Those who meditate on Ah come back to earth, led by the Rig Veda, to lead a pure life full of faith and love. Those who meditate on the first 2 sounds, Ah and U, led by the Yajur Veda, go to the lunar world full of pleasure, from which they come back cloyed to earth again. But those who meditate on Ah, U, and M are led by the Sama chants to the sun, where, freed from sin as a snake sheds its skin, they see the Supreme Lord who lives in all. These 3 sounds, when they are separated, cannot lead one beyond mortality. But when the whole mantram, Ah, U, and M, indivisible, interdependent, goes on reverberating in the mind, one is free from fear, awake or asleep. The Rig Veda brings one to earth, the Yajur escorts one to the region of the moon, the Sama leads one to the solar world, to which the sage attains through the mantram. Established in this cosmic vibration, the sage goes beyond fear, decay, and death to enter into infinite peace. Question 6. Then Sukesha approached the sage and said, "Master, the Prince of Kosala asked me this question once. Sukesha, do you know the self with his 16 forms?" "I don't," I replied. "If I did, I would certainly tell you, for he who speaks an untruth perishes like a tree without roots." The prince mounted his chariot and went away silent. "Now may I ask you, where is that self?" The sage replied, "Within this body dwells the self with his 16 forms, gentle friend. The self asks himself, what is it that makes me go, if it goes, and stay, if it stays? So he created prana, and from it desire, and from desire he made space, air, fire, water, the earth, the senses, the mind, and food. From food came strength, austerity, the scriptures, sacrifice, and all the worlds and everything was given name and form. As rivers lose their private name and form when they reach the sea, so that people speak of the sea alone, so all these 16 forms disappear when the self is realized. Then there is no more name and form for us, and we attain immortality. The self is the hub of the wheel of life, and the 16 forms are only the spokes. The self is the paramount goal of life. Attain this goal and go beyond death. The sage concluded, there is nothing more to be said of the self, nothing more. The students adored their teacher and said, You are our Father. You have taken us across the sea to the other shore. Let us adore the illumined sages. Let us adore the illumined sages. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Chandogya Upanishad. The wisdom of Shandilya. This universe comes forth from Brahman and will return to Brahman. Verily, all is Brahman. A person is what his deep desire is. It is our deepest desire in this life that shapes the life to come. So let us direct our deepest desires to realize the Self. The Self who can be realized by the pure in heart, who is life, light, truth, space, who gives rise to all works, all desires, all odors, all tastes, who is beyond words, who is joy abiding. This is the Self dwelling in my heart. Smaller than a grain of rice, smaller than a grain of barley, smaller than a mustard seed, smaller than a grain of millet, smaller even than the kernel of a grain of millet, is the Self. This is the Self dwelling in my heart, greater than the earth, greater than the sky, greater than all the worlds. This Self who gives rise to all works, all desires, all odors, all tastes, who pervades the universe, who is beyond words, who is joy abiding, who is ever present in my heart, is Brahman indeed. To him I shall attain when my ego dies. So said Shandilya. So said Shandilya. The story of Satyakama. Mother Satyakama said, I feel the time has come for me to go to the home of a spiritual teacher. From whom does our family come, so that I might tell him when he asks my lineage? I do not know, dear, she replied. You were born when I was young and going from place to place as a servant. Your name is Satyakama, and my name is Jabala. Why not call yourself Satyakama Jabala? Satyakama went to Haradrumata Gautama and said to him, Sir, I want to become your disciple. What family are you from, bright one? Sir, I don't know. My mother says she bore me in her youth and doesn't know my ancestry. She says that since my name is Satyakama and hers is Jabala, I should call myself Satyakama Jabala. None but a true Brahmin could have said that. Fetch the firewood, my boy. I will initiate you. You have not flinched from the truth. He selected 400 lean and sickly cows and gave them to Satyakama to care for. I shall not return, the boy said to himself, until they become 1,000. For years Satyakama dwelt in the forest tending the herd. Then one day the bull of the herd said to him, Satyakama. Sir, he replied, we have become 1,000. Let us now rejoin our teacher's family, and I will tell you one of the 4 feet of Brahman. Please tell me, revered sir, the boy said. There are 4 quarters, east, west, south, and north. This is 1 foot of Brahman, called the Shining. To meditate on these 4 is to become full of light and master the resplendent regions of the cosmos, knowing this portion of the truth. Agni, fire, will tell you more. The next day Satyakama set out for his teacher's house with the herd. Toward evening he made a fire, penned the cows, and sat by the fire facing east. The fire spoke. Satyakama, Sir, friend, I can teach you another foot of Brahman. Please do, revered sir. There are 4 quarters, earth, sky, heaven, and ocean. This is 1 foot of Brahman, called without end. Know this, meditate on this reality, and your life will be without end on this earth. A swan will tell you more. The next day Satyakama drove the cows onward. Toward evening he lit a fire, penned the cows, and sat by the fire facing east. Then a swan flew near and said, Satyakama, Sir, Friend, I can teach you another foot of Brahman. Please do, revered sir. There are 4 quarters: fire, the sun, the moon, and lightning. These make 1 foot of Brahman called full of light. To meditate on this 4-fold foot of truth is to be filled with light in this world and master the world of light. A diver bird will tell you more. The next day Satyakama drove the cows onward. Toward evening he lit a fire, penned the cows, and sat by the fire facing east. Then a diver bird flew near and spoke to him. Satyakama, sir, friend, I can teach you another foot of Brahman. Please do, revered sir. There are 4 parts: breath, eye, ear, and mind. This is 1 foot of Brahman called established. To meditate on this 4-fold foot of Brahman is to be at home in this world and master space. Whoever knows this 4-fold foot of Brahman is called established. So Satyakama returned to his teacher's home. Satyakama, his teacher called, you glow like one who has known the truth. Tell me, who has taught you? Satyakama replied, no human, sir, but I wish to hear the truth from you alone, for I have heard that only the teacher's wisdom comes to fruition for us. Then his teacher taught Satyakama that same wisdom. Nothing was left out from it. Nothing was left out. The story of Shwetaketu. Shwetaketu was Udalaka's son. When he was 12, his father said to him, it is time for you to find a teacher, dear one, for no one in our family is a stranger to the spiritual life. So Shwetaketu went to a teacher and studied all the Vedas for 12 years. At the end of this time he returned home proud of his intellectual knowledge. You seem to be proud of all this learning, said Udalaka, but did you ask your teacher for that spiritual wisdom which enables you to hear the unheard, think the unthought, and know the unknown? What is that wisdom, father? Asked the son. Udalaka said to Shwetaketu, as by knowing 1 lump of clay, dear one, we come to know all things made out of clay, that they differ only in name and form, while the stuff of which all are made is clay. As by knowing 1 gold nugget, dear one, we come to know all things made out of gold, that they differ only in name and form, while the stuff of which all are made is gold. As by knowing 1 tool of iron, dear one, we come to know all things made out of iron, that they differ only in name and form, while the stuff of which all are made is iron. So, through that spiritual wisdom, dear one, we come to know that all of life is one. My teachers must not have known this wisdom, said Shwetaketu, for if they had known, how could they have failed to teach it to me? Father, please instruct me in this wisdom. Yes, dear one, I will, replied his father. In the beginning was only being, one without a second. Out of himself he brought forth the cosmos and entered into everything in it. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shwetaketu. You are that. Please, father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Udalaka said. Let us start with sleep. What happens in it? When a man is absorbed in dreamless sleep, he is one with the self, though he knows it not. We say he sleeps, but he sleeps in the self. As a tethered bird grows tired of flying about in vain to find a place of rest, and settles down at last on its own perch, so the mind, tired of wandering about hither and thither, settles down at last in the self, dear one, to which it is bound. All creatures, dear one, have their source in him. He is their home. He is their strength. When a man departs from this world, dear one, speech merges in mind, mind in prana, prana in fire, and fire in pure being. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything, he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please, Father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. As bees suck nectar from many a flower and make their honey one, so that no drop can say, I am from this flower or that, all creatures, though one, know not they are that one. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please tell me, Father, more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. As the rivers flowing east and west merge in the sea and become one with it, forgetting they were ever separate rivers, so do all creatures lose their separateness when they merge at last into pure being. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything, he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please, Father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. Strike at the root of a tree, it would bleed, but still live. Strike at the trunk, it would bleed, but still live. Strike again at the top, it would bleed, but still live. The self as life supports the tree, which stands firm and enjoys the nourishment it receives. If the self leaves one branch, that branch withers. If it leaves a second, that too withers. If it leaves a third, that again withers. Let it leave the whole tree dies. Just so, dear one, when death comes and the self departs from the body dies. But the self dies not. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please, Father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. Bring me a fruit from the Nyayagrota tree. Here it is, sir. Break it. What do you see? These seeds, Father, all exceedingly small. Break one. What do you see? Nothing at all. That hidden essence you do not see, dear one, from that a whole Nyayagrota tree will grow. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything, he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please, Father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. Place this salt in water and bring it here tomorrow morning. The boy did. Where is that salt? The father asked. I do not see it. Sip here. How does it taste? Salty, Father. And here, and there, I taste salt everywhere. It is everywhere, though we see it not. Just so, dear one, the self is everywhere. Within all things, although we see him not. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything, he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please, Father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. As a man from Gandhara, blindfolded, led away and left in a lonely place, turns to the east and west and north and south and shouts, I am left here and cannot see, until one removes his blindfold and says, there lies Gandhara, follow that path, and thus informed, able to see for himself, the man inquires from village to village and reaches his homeland at last. Just so, my son, one who finds an illumined teacher attains to spiritual wisdom in the self. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything, he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Please, Father, tell me more about this self. Yes, dear one, I will, Uddalaka said. When a man is dying, his family all gather round and ask, Do you know me? Do you know me? And so long as his speech has not merged in mind, his mind in prana, prana in fire, and fire in pure being, he knows them all. But there is no more knowing when speech merges in mind, mind in prana, prana in fire, and fire in pure being. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Shvetaketu. You are that. Then Shvetaketu understood this teaching. Truly, he understood it all.
This is the end of side 3. Please fast forward the cassette to the end and turn over to play side 4.
The city of Brahman. In the city of Brahman is a secret dwelling, the lotus of the heart. Within this dwelling is a space, and within that space is the fulfillment of our desires. What is within that space should be longed for and realized. As great as the infinite space beyond is the space within the lotus of the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained in that inner space, both fire and air, sun and moon, lightning and stars. Whether we know it in this world or know it not, everything is contained in that inner space. Never fear that old age will invade that city. Never fear that this inner treasure of all reality will wither and decay. This knows no age when the body ages. This knows no dying when the body dies. This is the real city of Brahman. This is the self, free from old age, from death and grief, hunger and thirst. In the self, all desires are fulfilled. The self desires only what is real, thinks nothing but what is true. Here, people do what they are told, becoming dependent on their country, or their piece of land, or the desires of another, so their desires are not fulfilled, and their works come to nothing both in this world and in the next. Those who depart from this world without knowing who they are, or what they truly desire, have no freedom here or hereafter. But those who leave here knowing who they are, and what they truly desire, have freedom everywhere, both in this world and in the next. Would they see their departed mother or father? Lo, they see them and are happy. Would they see their family and friends? Lo, they see them and are happy. Would they enjoy the world of music, of spring flowers, of elegance? Lo, by their mere will they enjoy these things, whatever they desire. The object of that desire arises from the power of their own thoughts. They have it and are happy. Here, our selfless desires are hidden by selfish ones. They are real, but they are covered by what is false. Therefore, whoever of our own departs from this life, not one can ever be brought back before our eyes. But all those we love, alive or departed, and all things we desire but do not have, are found when we enter that space within the heart, for there abide all desires that are true, though covered by what is false. Like strangers in an unfamiliar country walking over a hidden treasure day by day, we enter the world of Brahman while in deep sleep but never find it, carried away by what is false. The self is hidden in the lotus of the heart. Those who see themselves in all creatures go day by day into the world of Brahman, hidden in the heart. Established in peace, they rise above body consciousness to the supreme light of the self. Immortal, free from fear, this self is Brahman, called the true. Beyond the mortal and the immortal, he binds both worlds together. Those who know this live day after day in heaven, in this very life. The self is a bulwark against the confounding of these worlds and a bridge between them. Day and night cannot cross that bridge, nor old age, nor death, nor grief, nor evil, nor good deeds. All evils turn back there, unable to cross. Evil comes not into this world of Brahman. One who crosses by this bridge, therefore, if blind, is blind no more. If hurt, ceases to be hurt. If in sorrow, ceases sorrowing. At this boundary, night itself becomes day. Night comes not into this world of Brahman. Only those who are pure and self-controlled can find this world of Brahman. That world is theirs alone. In that world, in all the worlds, they live in perfect freedom. The gods and the godless. The great teacher Prajapati said, "The self is pure, free from decay and death, free from hunger and thirst, and free from sorrow. The self desires nothing that is not good, wills nothing that is not good. Seek and realize the self. Those who seek and realize the self fulfill all their desires and attain the goal supreme." The Devas and the Asuras, the gods and the godless, heard this truth and said, "Let us seek and realize the self so that we may fulfill all our desires." So Indra from among the gods and Virochana from among the godless approached Prajapati carrying fuel in their hands as a sign that they wanted to become his disciples. They dwelt with him for 32 years, and at the end of that time Prajapati asked why they had stayed with him so long. Indra and Virochana replied, "We have heard of your inspiring words. The self is pure, free from decay and death, free from hunger and thirst, and free from sorrow. The self desires nothing that is not good, wills nothing that is not good. Seek and realize the self. Those who seek and realize the self fulfill all their desires and attain the goal supreme. We have been living here as your disciples because we want to realize the self." Prajapati said to them, "When you look into another's eyes, what you see is the self, fearless and deathless. That is Brahman, the Supreme." "Venerable One," asked the two disciples, "what is it we see reflected in the water or in a mirror?" "It is the self you see in all these," he said to them. "Now, look at yourselves in a bowl of water and ask me anything you want to learn about the self." They looked at themselves in a bowl of water. "What did you see in the water?" "We have seen the self, even the hair and the nails." "Put on your best clothes, adorn your body, and look again in the water." "We have seen the self, well dressed and well adorned," they replied. "That is the self, fearless and deathless. That is Brahman, the Supreme." Indra and Virochana went away satisfied, but Prajapati said to himself, "They have seen the self, but they have not recognized the self. They mistake the self to be the body. Those who think the self is the body will lose their way in life." Virochana, quite sure that the self is the body, went back to the godless and began to teach them that the body alone is to be saved, the body alone is to be adored. He taught them that whoever lives for indulging the senses will find joy in this world and the next. Even today, people are called godless when they lack faith, love, and charity, because that is the way of the godless. They dress even dead bodies in fine clothes and adorn them with ornaments so that they may enjoy their life in the next world. But Indra, as he was on his way home to the gathering of the gods, began to question this knowledge. If the self is the same as the body, well dressed when the body is well dressed, well adorned when the body is well adorned, then the self will be blind when the body is blind, lame when the body is lame, paralyzed when the body is paralyzed, and when the body dies, the self too will die. In such knowledge I see no value." Again Indra went back to Prajapati with fuel in hand. "Why have you returned, Indra?" his teacher asked. "Did you not go away quite satisfied?" "Venerable One," replied Indra, "if the self is well dressed when the body is well dressed, well adorned when the body is well adorned, then the self will be blind when the body is blind, lame when the body is lame, paralyzed when the body is paralyzed, and when the body dies, the self too will die. In such knowledge I see no value. You are thinking clearly, Indra, said Prajapati. Live with me for another 32 years, and I will teach you more of the self. So Indra lived with Prajapati for another 32 years. Then Prajapati said to him, that which moves about in joy in the dreaming state is the self, fearless and deathless. That is Brahman, the Supreme. Indra went away satisfied. But on his way home to the gathering of the gods, he began to question this knowledge. In the dreaming state, it is true the self is not blind when the body is blind, nor lame when the body is lame, nor paralyzed when the body is paralyzed, nor slain when the body is slain. Yet in dreams the self may appear to suffer and to be slain. It may become conscious of pain and even weep. In such knowledge I see no value. Again Indra went back to Prajapati with fuel in hand. Why have you returned, Indra? His teacher asked. Did you not go away quite satisfied? Venerable one, replied Indra, in the dreaming state it is true the self is not blind when the body is blind, nor lame when the body is lame. Yet in this state the self may still suffer and even weep. In such knowledge I see no value. You are thinking clearly, Indra, said Prajapati. Live with me for another 32 years and I will teach you more of the self. Indra lived with Prajapati for another 32 years. Then his teacher said, when a person is sleeping soundly, free from dreams, with a still mind, that is the self, fearless and deathless. That is Brahman, the Supreme. Indra went away satisfied, but on his way home to the gathering of the gods, he began to question this knowledge. In the state of dreamless sleep, one is not aware of oneself or any other. The state of dreamless sleep is very close to extinction. In this knowledge, I see no value. Again, Indra went back to Prajapati with fuel in hand. Why have you returned, Indra? His teacher asked. Did you not go away quite satisfied? Venerable one, replied Indra, in the state of dreamless sleep one is not aware of oneself or any other. The state of dreamless sleep is very close to extinction. In this knowledge, I see no value. You are thinking clearly, Indra, said Prajapati. Live with me for another 5 years, and I will teach you to realize the self. Indra lived with Prajapati for another 5 years. Altogether, he lived with his teacher for 101 years, which is why people say even Indra had to live with his teacher for 101 years. After that time, Prajapati revealed the highest truth of the self to Indra. It is true the body is perishable, but within it dwells the imperishable self. This body is subject to pleasure and pain. No one who identifies with the body can escape from pleasure and pain. But those who know they are not the body pass beyond pleasure and pain to live in abiding joy. Like the wind, like clouds, like thunder and lightning, which rise from space without physical shape and reach the transcendent light in their own form, those who rise above body consciousness ascend to the transcendent light in their real form, the self. In that state, free from attachment, they move at will, laughing, playing, and rejoicing. They know the self is not this body, but only tied to it for a time, as an ox is tied to its cart. Whenever one sees, smells, speaks, hears, or thinks, they know it is the self that sees, smells, speaks, hears, and thinks. The senses are but his instruments. Worshipping this self in the world of Brahman, the gods obtained all worlds and all desires. Those who know this self and realize this self obtain all worlds and all desires. So said Prajapati. So taught Prajapati. A paean of illumination. From the divine dark to the manifest, to the divine dark, I pass again. As a horse shakes free its mane, I have shaken off all evil, freeing myself from the bonds of birth and death. As the moon escapes from Rahu's mouth, I have attained the pure realm of Brahman. I have attained the pure realm of Brahman. Brahman is my home. I shall not lose it. Truly, I shall not be lost again. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Isha Upanishad. All this is full, all that is full. From fullness, fullness comes. When fullness is taken from fullness, fullness still remains. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all. The Lord is the supreme reality. Rejoice in him through renunciation. Covet nothing. All belongs to the Lord. Thus working, may you live 100 years. Thus alone will you work in real freedom. Those who deny the self are born again blind to the self, enveloped in darkness, utterly devoid of love for the Lord. The self is one. Ever still, the self is swifter than thought, swifter than the senses. Though motionless, he outruns all pursuit. Without the self, never could life exist. The self seems to move, but is ever still. He seems far away, but is ever near. He is within all, and he transcends all. Those who see all creatures in themselves, and themselves in all creatures, know no fear. Those who see all creatures in themselves, and themselves in all creatures, know no grief. How can the multiplicity of life delude the one who sees its unity? The self is everywhere. Bright is the self, indivisible, untouched by sin, wise, immanent, and transcendent. He it is who holds the cosmos together. In dark night live those for whom the world without alone is real. The first leads to a life of action, the second to a life of meditation, but those who combine action with meditation cross the sea of death through action and enter into immortality through the practice of meditation. So have we heard from the wise. In dark night live those for whom the Lord is transcendent only. In night darker still for whom he is immanent only. But those for whom he is transcendent and immanent cross the sea of death with the immanent and enter into immortality with the transcendent. So have we heard from the wise. The face of truth is hidden by your orb of gold, O sun. May you remove your orb so that I, who adore the true, may see the glory of truth. O nourishing sun, solitary traveler, controller, source of life for all creatures, spread your light and subdue your dazzling splendor so that I may see your blessed self. Even that very self am I. May my life merge in the immortal when my body is reduced to ashes. O mind, meditate on the eternal Brahman. Remember the deeds of the past. Remember, O mind, remember. O God of fire, lead us by the good path to eternal joy. You know all our deeds. Deliver us from evil, we who bow and pray again and again. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad. What is the cause of the cosmos? Is it Brahman? From where do we come? By what live? Where shall we find peace at last? What power governs the duality of pleasure and pain by which we are driven? Time, nature, necessity, accident, elements, energy, intelligence, none of these can be the first cause. They are effects whose only purpose is to help the self rise above pleasure and pain. In the depths of meditation, sages saw within themselves the Lord of love who dwells in the heart of every creature. Deep in the hearts of all he dwells. hidden beyond the gunas of law, energy, and inertia. He is one. He it is who rules over time, space, and causality. The world is the wheel of God, turning round and round with all living creatures upon its rim. The world is the river of God, flowing from him and flowing back to him. On this ever-revolving wheel of being, the individual self goes round and round through life after life, believing itself to be a separate creature, until it sees its identity with the Lord of love and attains immortality in the indivisible whole. He is the eternal reality, sing the scriptures, and the ground of existence. Those who perceive him in every creature merge in him and are released from the wheel of birth and death. The Lord of love holds in his hand the world, composed of the changing and the changeless, the manifest and the unmanifest. The separate self, not yet aware of the Lord, goes after pleasure, only to become bound more and more. When it sees the Lord, there comes an end to its bondage. Conscious spirit and unconscious matter both have existed since the dawn of time, with Maya appearing to connect them, misrepresenting joy as outside us. When all these three are seen as one, the self reveals his universal form and serves as an instrument of the divine will. All is change in the world of the senses, but changeless is the supreme Lord of love. Meditate on him. Be absorbed in him. Wake up from this dream of separateness. The learned say life is self-created. Others say that life has evolved from time. It is the Lord who has brought the cosmos out of himself. He is pure consciousness, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, creator of time and master of the three gunas. Evolution takes place at his command. Those who act without thought of personal profit and lead a well-disciplined life discover, in course of time, the divine principle that all forms of life are one. Those who work in the service of the Lord are freed from the law of karma. Know him to be the primal source of life, whose glory permeates the universe, who is beyond time and space and is seen within the heart in meditation. Know that he is beyond the tree of life, he whose power makes the planets revolve, who is both law and mercy and is seen within the heart in meditation. Know him to be the supreme Lord of lords, King of kings, God of gods, ruler of all without action or organs of action, whose power is seen in myriad ways. Know him to be the cause, without a second, parent, or master. May he, Lord of love, who conceals himself in creatures as a spider in its web, grant us illumination. The Lord is hidden in every heart. He is the eternal witness, beyond the gunas, watching our work from within as pure consciousness. The Lord is the operator. We are but his innumerable instruments. May we, in our consciousness, realize the bliss he alone can give us. Changeless amid the changing, consciousness of the conscious, he grants all our prayers. May we, in our consciousness, realize the freedom he alone can give. Neither sun nor moon nor star nor fire shines. Everything reflects the light of the Lord. May we realize him in our consciousness. There is no other way to conquer death. He is the maker of the universe, self-existent, omniscient, destroyer of death, the source and inmost self of all, ruler of the cycle of birth and death. May we realize him in our consciousness. There is no other way to conquer death. Lord Shiva is my refuge, he who grants freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Lord Shiva is my refuge, he who gave the sacred scriptures at the dawn of time. Lord Shiva is my refuge, he who is the source of purity and perfection. Lord Shiva is my refuge, he who is the bridge from death to immortality. Lord Shiva is my refuge, he whose grace has made me long for his lotus feet. How can we roll up the sky like a piece of deerskin? How can we end our misery without realizing that the Lord of love is enshrined in our heart of hearts? Sage Shvetasvatara realized the Lord in meditation through his infinite grace and imparted this highest wisdom to devoted disciples. This highest mystical experience, revealed at the dawn of time, must be shared only with one whose heart is pure, or with a disciple, or one's own child. If you have deep love for the Lord of love and for your teacher, the light of this teaching will shine in your heart. It will shine indeed. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Teja Bindu Upanishad. Let us meditate on the shining self, changeless, underlying the world of change, and realized in the heart in samadhi. Hard to reach is the supreme goal of life, hard to describe, and hard to abide in. They alone attain samadhi who have mastered their senses and are free from anger, free from self-will, and free from likes and dislikes, without selfish bonds to people and things. They alone attain samadhi who are prepared to face challenge after challenge in the 3 stages of meditation. Under an illumined teacher's guidance, they become united with the Lord of love, called Vishnu, who is present everywhere. Though the 3 gunas emanate from him, he is infinite and invisible. Though all the galaxies emerge from him, he is without form and unconditioned. To be united with the Lord of love is to be freed from all conditioning. This is the state of self-realization, far beyond the reach of words and thoughts. To be united with the Lord of love, imperishable, changeless, beyond cause and effect, is to find infinite joy. Brahman is beyond all duality, beyond the reach of thinker and of thought. Let us meditate on the shining self, the ultimate reality, who is realized by the sages in samadhi. Brahman cannot be realized by those who are subject to greed, fear, and anger. Brahman cannot be realized by those who are subject to the pride of name and fame, or to the vanity of scholarship. Brahman cannot be realized by those who are enmeshed in life's duality. But to all those who pierce this duality, whose hearts are given to the Lord of love, he gives himself through his infinite grace. He gives himself through his infinite grace. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amrita Bindu Upanishad. The mind may be said to be of 2 kinds, pure and impure. Driven by the senses, it becomes impure. But with the senses under control, the mind becomes pure. It is the mind that frees us or enslaves. Driven by the senses, we become bound. Master of the senses, we become free. Those who seek freedom must master their senses. When the mind is detached from the senses, one reaches the summit of consciousness. Mastery of the mind leads to wisdom. Practice meditation. Stop all vain talk. The highest state is beyond the reach of thought, for it lies beyond all duality. Keep repeating the ancient mantra, Om, until it reverberates in your heart. Brahman is indivisible and pure. Realize Brahman and go beyond all change. He is immanent and transcendent. Realizing him, sages attain freedom and declare there are no separate minds. They have but realized what they always are. Waking, sleeping, dreaming, the self is one. Transcend these 3 and go beyond rebirth. There is only one self in all creatures. The one appears many, just as the moon appears many, reflected in water. The self appears to change its location, but does not, just as the air in a jar changes not when the jar is moved about. When the jar is broken, the air knows not, but the self knows well when the body is shed. We see not the self concealed by Maya. When the veil falls, we see we are the self. The mantra is the symbol of Brahman. Repeating it can bring peace to the mind. Knowledge is twofold, lower and higher. Realize the self, for all else is lower. Realization is rice, all else is chaff. The milk of cows of any hue is white. The sages say that wisdom is the milk and the sacred scriptures are the cows. As butter lies hidden within milk, the self lies hidden in the hearts of all. Churn the mind through meditation on it. Light your fire through meditation on it. The self, all whole, all peace, all certitude. I have realized the self, declares the sage, who is present in all beings. I am united with the Lord of love. I am united with the Lord of love. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Paramahamsa Upanishad. Narada inquired of the Lord of love, "What is the state of the illumined man?" The Lord replied, "Hard to reach is the state of the illumined man. Only a few attain it. But even one is enough, for he is the pure self of the scriptures. He is truly great because he serves me, and I reveal myself through him always. He has renounced all selfish attachments and observes no rites and ceremonies. He has only minimum possessions and lives his life for the welfare of all. He has no staff, nor tuft, nor sacred thread. He faces heat and cold, pleasure and pain, honor and dishonor with equal calm. He is not affected by calumny, pride, jealousy, status, joy, or sorrow, greed, anger, or infatuation, excitement, egoism, or other goads, for he knows he is neither body nor mind. Free from the sway of doubt and false knowledge, he lives united with the Lord of love, who is ever serene, immutable, indivisible, the source of all joy and wisdom. The Lord is his true home, his pilgrim's tuft of hair, his sacred thread, for he has entered the unitive state. Having renounced every selfish desire, he has found his rest in the Lord of love. Wisdom is the staff that supports him now. Those who take a mendicant's staff while they are still at the mercy of their senses cannot escape enormous suffering. The illumined man knows this truth of life. For him the universe is his garment, and the Lord not separate from himself. He offers no ancestral oblations. He praises nobody, blames nobody, is never dependent on anyone. He has no need to repeat the mantra, no more need to practice meditation. The world of change and changeless reality are one to him, for he sees all in God. The aspirant who is seeking the Lord must free himself from selfish attachments to people, money, and possessions. When his mind sheds every selfish desire, he becomes free from the duality of pleasure and pain, and rules his senses. No more is he capable of ill will. No more is he subject to elation, for his senses come to rest in the self. Entering into the unitive state, he attains the goal of evolution. Truly, he attains the goal of evolution. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.